Takes. Not sure I even needed to say it because the hot takes have been happening all week long on Climbing the Pocket. The Vikings beat the Bears, fire Mike Zimmer, and fire Rick Spielman. That's a whole lot to review in just 20 minutes. So come join y'all. Dave, hit the rolling.
Let's go a Viking on Viking Hot Takes.
Welcome to the fast-moving Minnesota Vikings talk show, Viking Hot Takes. We've got me, Flip Mozzie. We've got Eric J. Thompson. We've got 6 questions and the fans with the answers in the comments. So buckle up and let's go. Eric, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I had to wear some black because we're losing a lot of people. We already lost a head coach and a GM, and I think there's going to be a lot of turnover in the coming months. It was nice to go out with a meaningless W. I think it only ended up costing them 1 or 2 draft picks, or maybe 3 or something. I think it was 3, right? Because they could have gotten as much as 9th. So I'm sure that we won't overreact to the 9th, 10th, and 11th picks in this upcoming draft. But it was time. It was time. It's a new era, and we're excited to figure out exactly what that era is going to be in the coming weeks.
That's true. So we're just getting started, like Eric said, and Dave's going to put the time on the clock. We're going to hop right in to the 6 questions. Eric, I'm going to start. Question number 1, grade the Vikings offense.
Okay. Well, I mean, first of all, can I grade your questions? I mean, okay, last week it was grade Kubiak and Zimmer. Now tonight it's grade the offense and the defense. I mean, if I wanted someone to mail it in with the first 2 predictable plays to start us off, I would have just hired Clint Kubiak. I just would have hired Clint Kubiak to be the co-host. But in all seriousness, yes. It is. It's a season review. I know. I'm giving you crap, but it was kind of funny.
I
I had to
know.
I had to throw it out there.
I
So
love
yes,
it.
it is technically this is a different question, but I mean I have the same overall grade as I had for Kubiak last week. It's below average. I mean you have to do like the C minus D plus kind of thing because I think the volume numbers for the Vikings offense were fine. They were in the top half of the league in points and yards and net yards per attempt, and they had the fewest turnovers. I think they were tied. There was like
Hmm.
13 turnovers, but the drive
Hmm.
stats and the EPA stats that tells a completely different story. They were 28th in average drive time and 27th in plays per drive, and that's great if you're scoring quickly. Like if you're throwing the 98 Vikings out there and they're scoring every 2 minutes, that's great. But it's not great when it's paired with this stat that I tweeted out today that the Vikings tied with the Texans, the Houston Texans, that train wreck, for the most 3-and-outs this season with 53 of them. It's
It's
just completely
maddening.
inexcusable. It's and I mean
Yeah.
we all kind of agree that the defense wasn't good enough. I mean that's ended what ended up getting Zimmer canned. I think that was it, he's a defensive coach. The defense didn't do enough. But this offense with the quarterback that's averaging, I mean, we could talk about next year's salary, but averaging over the course of like $33 million a year, and two stud wide receivers that played for the majority of the year, and plenty to offer out of the backfield, even when Dalvin Cook isn't playing every single game, you definitely has to share some of the blame. It was just not good enough on the offense, especially, and it was like every time they needed a big drive or a big answer. I mean, there was that stretch there for 2 or 3 games where the Vikings had, I think, 4 or 5 takeaways, and they scored a whopping 3 points off of it, and I think they got a grand total of about 4 yards off of it. That's it's just
Yeah.
it's situational football, and that's where they really struggled. The opening scripts were great; they would score a lot on those, but when they really needed a drive or when they needed to control the ball, they gave it back to that below average defense way too quickly.
Yeah, and you see, that was a great question because I just got a great answer out of you. They're calling you Eric the Eviscerator right now, and like you said, the number one thing is that 53 three and outs. That's more than 3 times a game on average, where the defense is get off the field, take a 2 sips of water, you're right back on the field in 4 plays, and the sum was less than the parts. Look, I know the pass game was good, but the run game was atrocious. And like you said, the sum was just less than the parts. So going forward, that's kind of what you need to ask yourself is how are you going to get more out of the offense? Next question. Let's go.
All right. My first one for you is: are the Vikings entering a full rebuild now that they fired, not fired Cousins? That's a Freudian slip, isn't it? Now that they've fired Spielman and Zimmer.
Wishful thinking.
No, of course not.
Yes. Yes, and our
Okay.
CTP man Miles, he's calling it a reset, which I love. It's not even a full rebuild. People get confused by the term rebuild all the time. This is a reset. We might as well change the logo and the colors of the team because this team is going to look very different in 2022 and beyond. I count 13 free agents who saw significant time this season and are no longer under contract, and they're $7 million over the salary cap. So they have to cut back even more before they start to replace those 13 players. So that's 20 new players minimum for the Vikings to go with a new head coach and a new GM. It's a reset.
Yeah, I think. I mean, when I don't think they're blowing it up like a lot of these teams that kind of have to do that. Where that's why I think the Vikings are kind of at the top of a lot of lists of most favorable
Yeah.
positions for prospective GMs and head coaches because there are a lot of pieces in place, and I think there's a pretty good infrastructure in place. I don't think that the Wilfs are interested in going and completely bottoming out and rebuilding from the studs. I mean, Mark Wilf said in the press conference, he said,
Yeah.
they expect to be competitive in 2022, and I think he's going to do everything in his power to be competitive, at least to be, to not be one of the bottom teams, and to not be the Lions or the Jets or the Texans or one of those kind of teams.
Well, yeah,
I
that's
think they're
such a
going to hire.
vague. Yeah, that's
Well,
such a
sure,
vague
yeah, of
term. What
course,
does
everyone.
competitive mean? Were we
Right. Yeah,
competitive
that's
this year?
yeah, up until until it mattered. Yeah, I mean I
Yeah.
think that's what they're going to shoot for, to be around that. I don't think they want to pick in the top 3 going forward, things like that. But I think they're going to hire a GM and a head coach with a clear vision of what they plan to do in the immediate future, because this is the NFL these days. Very few people are going to get the 3, 4, 5 year plan. I mean, you really have to screw it up to only get 1 year of the shot at it. But we see that a lot more often than we see, if things go really bad. We saw a few teams do it this year for one reason or another. It's really, really rare to see, someone get a leash of 3, 4 years, unless there are some results in those first 2, 3 years. So there's no, because there's no doubting the passion and loyalty of Vikings fans. No one can accuse us of being bandwagon fans, because there's really not a whole lot to celebrate over the last several years. But I mean, that said, you really think that they're going to pack out US Bank Stadium, like in December, if this team is like 3-12 next year? Like, I mean, we kind of saw
Yeah.
the attendance was fine for the Bears game, but that was a really quiet stadium. And I think that's the Welsh realize that they have to put at least a decent product on the field, and I think that's going to influence a little bit the decisions they make going forward.
Yeah, I don't think it's even in their control. Like, we talk about the wrecking, like we think about a rebuild like swinging a wrecking ball at a building, and maybe that's not what's happening here, but that building has already started to fall apart. We've already seen it over the last 2 seasons, and the fans kind of already are at rock bottom. So maybe not from a competitive standpoint, but from an excitement standpoint, that's what brings fans into the stadium, is new exciting players or a new exciting coach. Because again, it's already crumbling. It's just about removing a few more columns, if you ask me.
Right. And I think that's the number one thing that Vikings fans were sick of these last couple of years, is it was more of the same. And if you brought back Zimmer and Spielman, it was going to be probably
Mm-hmm.
more of the same. I think we saw the ceiling of that regime. So new is going to be exciting. It might not have results right away, but it's at least it'll be it'll be different, and I think that's what Vikings fans are really waiting for.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So, second critical question, Eric. And the best part about the Vikings playing their starters in week 18 is we get to actually review the season stats and not have to discount or throw away the last game, because they
True.
tried in all 18 of them, and we still have this defense to talk about. So, overall, how did the defense fare?
I mean, right now, like after the season, you have to like you can officially give it an F, right? Like that, it wasn't good enough. It was. I mean, Arif Hassan from the Athletic, our buddy, he had an article is basically that boiled down to, yes, there were a lot of factors in the offense that we already talked about today, but the defense is what let Zimmer down and probably what cost him his job. It was not good enough. They had a lot of pieces that they gambled and lost with. To be frank, they signed a lot of the 1 year deals that we're talking about. That's why there's so much. There's probably going to be a lot of turnover, and we're going to talk about that in my next question. But it just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't good enough. I mean, they were, I think, 30th in yards overall. I mean, they were 28th in passing yards against. It was just, and the most of their analytics ratings were a little better than that, but it still wasn't. A lot of I can't remember who it was, but there were people talking about that this defense could be top 5 or even top 1 going in, because with all the new pieces, and it was absolutely nothing close to that. And if this defense was, even top half overall, I think in the league, they probably would have snuck into the playoffs. It just wasn't, and they're really going to have to press this at least that side of the ball. I think there's going to be a pretty they're going to have to hit the reset button for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, if you I don't give them an F now, I'm never going to give them an F. Um, but
They failed.
I
They
will
failed to make the
say,
playoffs. They failed their coach. They failed everyone.
that when you look at some of those same analytic stats and rate stats, their DVOA was middle of the
Right.
league.
Right.
Their EPA per play were middle of the league. 15th. It's the same rankings that the offense got. So we're giving the defense an F for basically the same overall performance when
Right.
you adjust for opponent, when we're giving the offense a B minus. And that doesn't add up to me. And I will, admit that there were some really bad moments. The run defense was atrocious, and that's really sad to see, really disappointing, because Michael Pierce and Dalvin Tomlinson, are going to be involved going forward. So they struggled to get off the field. I'm a little hesitant to to put it all on them when they have similar
That's
analytic ratings. And like we just talked about, they only got 2 sips of water before they had to be right back on that field.
yeah. I think that's totally fair. The perception is a lot like that the offense was up here and the defense was way down here. Reality is that they were pretty close. The new
Ply
regime and the
Charmin
fact that the
soft.
Vikings the I like that 4 ply Charmin soft. It was it the it was a lot close. It was really a team effort. That's the Mike
Yeah,
Zimmer lost the team. He didn't just screw up the defense or a couple parts of it. This was a systemic failure, and I think that's why that there's going to be a lot of new faces with the team next year.
yeah,
Okay, my
yeah.
second one for you. Speaking of that defense, how many defensive starters are going to be back in 2022? Because I don't think the number is very high.
Okay, so caveat, I'm just going to say there's 12 starters, even though there's 11 on the team. I like to
Fair.
include the nickel linebacker or the base linebacker and the nickel cornerback. So of those 12 guys, I'm going to say hopefully 5 will be back. And that's Cam Dantzler, Michael Pierce, Dalvin Tomlinson, and then 2 of Kendrick Smith, Daniil Hunter. So that's good but old. Obviously, if they have to trade one of them or if one of them asks for a trade, it could be less than that. But either way, it's less than half of the defensive starters should be back in 2022. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, let's walk through it. I think Hunter,
4.
unless they're
4.
really rebuilding and doing everything, he's going to
Yeah.
come back. I think
Yeah.
Tomlinson and Pierce, they were technically starters. I think Pierce, I don't think has any money guaranteed to him next year. They could definitely move on. But I think Pierce showed
Yeah.
enough. It's just a matter of being on the field. If he's struggling with injuries again, maybe they get rid of him in preseason or something like that. But I think those two will be back. Griffin, obviously, for a variety of reasons, he's out. Like Barr basically said goodbye on Instagram right after the Bears, so I'd be very surprised if he's back.
Mm-hmm.
Kendrick, so sure he'll be there. I mean, the secondary basically is already half gone. I mean, Alexander was, I think he retained that title through week 18 of being the worst corner in PFF grade. I'm not sure. I haven't checked. I didn't check after that. But
He's
I mean,
gone.
Breland, a starter, already kicked off the team, and the only one. I mean, Dantzler, yeah, he'll be back because he's on a rookie deal, and Peterson, I would think about bringing back just to have a leadership because there's going to be a lot of new faces in that room. But like Xavier Woods,
He's
I think
gone.
Bynum is going. Yeah, I think his replacement's already been found. I think Bynum's a cheaper replacement, and Harrison Smith will be around. I think at least next year. So, I mean, I think there are only 3 absolute yeses that you can say that, but I think maybe closer to at the very most 6, probably somewhere around 4 or 5.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Okay.
gonna be different, like we said. It's just gonna be different.
hmm
All right. Next question. Eric, the next Vikings GM, and I want the fans. I want your opinion on this one. The next
Oh, we're gonna
Vikings
get the
GM
opinions.
should be blank.
Oh boy, this is a tough one. I first of all, it looks like they're casting the Vikings, the Wilfs they're casting a wide net and they're targeting a lot
Mm-hmm.
of younger up and coming assistant GMs, player personnel kind of people that have had recent success, like on these teams like the Eagles and the Browns that have had some pretty recent success of team building, and that makes sense to me. I like the
Mm-hmm.
approach thus far, but again, we're very early in the process. We're 4 days removed or 3 days removed from Spielman and Zimmer actually getting fired, so we're still early in the process. Personally, a few names that I like out there. Kwesi
Mm-hmm.
Adolfo Mensah from the Browns. I'm hearing some pretty good things about him. Ed Dodds, has a pretty good track record in Indianapolis. Maybe they pull a Elliott Wolf and pull a Brett Favre of GMs, take a Packers retread and win a couple games with that. And Brandon Brown and Catherine Race from the Eagles, I think, are some interesting names as well because it's kind of ironic that the that Peterson's getting so much love, even though like he's gone and the Eagles are still making the playoffs with a probably, with after they replaced him. But so I don't have anyone I'm pounding the table for. We're getting a lot of fun suggestions in the comments here. I just want that I hope the order is find a GM, and that GM helps find the new coach, because I think that makes the most sense. You have to have those two working in sync, at least being somewhat on the same page. And I think Spielman and Zimmer were pretty much on the same page for a lot of the stuff, but I think a couple of the things where both of them were a little too stubborn is what got them in trouble. So hopefully one can lead into the other. Do you have any certain names that you're a big fan of so far?
I cannot go with a name here. It's too early, but I can go with an adjective. And my adjective is patient. Just anybody
Yes.
who's going to treat this with a patient, long term mindset, because I think the worst thing they can do is try to gain clout by saying immediate success. It happens now. I mean, you look at some of the other immediate successes around the league, whether it's Cleveland or Indianapolis or San Francisco, sooner or later the road is going to get rocky. And and if this is a 2024 build, that's okay. You look at the NFC North, Detroit and Chicago have a ways to go. Green Bay, Rodgers may not be there in a few years. So there's a window. So the next GM just needs to be patient and hit that window.
Yep, I agree. It. We both have discussed several times before either Zimmer or Spielman got fired that it's probably going to be a step back in 2022, and that's okay if they're building towards the future. All right,
Yeah.
my last one
Yeah.
for you is in the same kind of vein. We're looking for a new one of these too. The next Vikings head coach will be, and you can't just say patience. You have to at least throw out a couple names that you like, because this head coach is more of a GM stuff. That's behind the scenes stuff. You got to be kind of a diehard for that. But at least you have to have a couple people that you like. But you don't have to say that this is going to be the next one. But who do you like?
I'm only gonna say one. I'm gonna say Byron Leftwich. I really just
Okay.
like his his experience both in Pittsburgh and in Tampa Bay, just that from a cultural perspective. But the number one thing I'm looking for the next Vikings coach to be is a janitor. I mean, one thing
Okay.
that no
Explain.
one has really talked about is it's not just the players here, it's the rest of the coaching staff. We've got Clint Kubiak and Andrew Janoko and Adam Zimmer and Rick Dennison and Paul Gunther and AC Patterson. It is time to clean house off of this coaching staff. And for me, one of the first moments in excitement isn't just going to be the new GM or the new head coach. It's going to be watching them build that full staff and watching that come together compared to just the guys we have coaching right now.
Yeah, I like it. I like that approach. And that I talked about this a little bit last week because we kind of knew Zimmer was a dead coach walking. But it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have you have to swing the pendulum just to swing the pendulum. You don't have to have a young
Right.
offensive guru just because the last guy was an old defensive guru. Like let just get the
Mm-hmm.
best leader, because again, everyone knows the X's and O's in the NFL. Everyone can call plays. Everyone can do that kind of stuff. But the person that can get the most out of their players and assess their players the best, and not say, oh, hey, this is my system, I'm going to come in and we're going to do this, this, and this. Like, take a look at who I have. Okay, what can we do to get the most out of Cousins? Let's get the ball to Jefferson more. What does Thielen have left in the tank? How can we manage Cook and Madison so Cook isn't missing 4 or 5 games a year? Stuff like that. I think that's a much
Yeah.
bigger part of it than saying, oh, hey, that's an offensive, defensive guy. That said, we got just over 30 seconds left. I do like Leftwich. I think he's probably right at the top of my list as well. Again, I think he's put in his
Mm-hmm.
dues at a couple different places, and I don't think it's just Tom Brady doing that offense. Flores, if he can surround himself with better offensive coaches, I think Flores is a really good leader. I don't think he did a very good
Mm-hmm.
job at putting offensive coaches around him in Miami, and I think that's a big reason why he's available. Bieniemy, again, I think Daboll from Buffalo, maybe Kellen Moore. I'm a little worried that he's just hey, this is the Sean McVay look-alike and sound alike. But
Right.
it's exciting. It's a little scary, and again, they might take a step back before they take a step forward, but it's time. And speaking of
It's
time,
time.
there it is, right at the
On
buzzer.
the dot. Just always a pleasure, Eric. Fans in the comments, y'all know it. We're going to be here for the off season. Not every week, but when we have hot takes, we promise that you'll hear them. And until then, enjoy the NFL playoffs. Maybe we can learn what winning football looks like. Eric, you got your picks figured out for the super wild card weekend?
Not yet, because they're too chalky right now. I'll post them on Twitter, I
Yeah.
promise. But I got to find which road teams are winning, because there's at least a couple that are going to sneak through. And hey, the crowd
Patriots
was
over
hopping
Bills.
tonight. Well done.
Yeah.
I think the Bills handled that,
Patriots
but yeah,
over
maybe
Bills.
the Niners, maybe
Woo!
the Niners. I like that one, but yeah, we'll see. But everyone, the participation was outstanding tonight. I love the comments. That obviously there are a lot of there's a lot of passion, a lot of opinions. It's going to be some exciting times for this team going forward.
Definitely. So until next time, y'all, we're gonna wrap this up. Skol Vikes.
Skol.
Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. Skol, everybody.